Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Garrard Coffey. I am the Ag and Natural Resource Agent for the University of Kentucky in Rockcastle County. Today, I am joined by Dr. Bob Coleman, University of Kentucky Equine Specialist. Good afternoon, Dr. Bob. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Garrard.
So we've got a couple of topics we're going to talk about. The first thing that we have on our list today to talk about are pre-riding equipment check. So we have our tack room. I think one thing that a lot of people miss with equine and riding horses is that there's a lot that goes into the ride before we even catch a horse, I think. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, and I think it's a lot of stuff we tend to ignore.
I think that's right. I probably am guilty myself of having a tack room full of equipment that probably some of it needs to be thrown away, and some of it needs to be cleaned up. And you know, I've got my favorites that I use every time, but then there's a lot of stuff that probably needs some work.
That is pretty common for most of us. And well, I don't have as many horses as most. I have a lot of stuff that probably fits with the description that you just gave.
So. Whenever we're talking about our tack, we talk about cleaning it up. So how often do you think we should be cleaning tack, and how should we be doing that?
Well, there's a lot of things, and some of the really old, and I don't mean to insult the people that write English, but you'd read in some of their books that they would talk about cleaning tack after every ride. And most of us certainly don't have that kind of time. I think that if you did a really good cleaning before the riding season started, now if you're riding all the time, probably, every couple or 3 weeks is probably more than enough. But if it's been hanging in the tack room for a while, I think going and getting some good saddle soap and giving it a good scrub. And which kind you get, I think there's a lot of people out there that tell you that you should use this or you shouldn't use that. I think you use what works the best for you and does a good job cleaning your tack, whether it be one of those glycerin bar soaps or the cream kind of things that come in a tin. I strongly recommend read the directions real quick, because it'll tell you, how much water to consider, how wet should your sponge be. But usually it's just scrub it really good, and as it dries, then go rub it good after that. And then personally, I like using some kind of a conditioner. I think that keeps it better, probably protects it a little bit. Granted, some of the saddle soaps will actually do that, but I guess I like to err on the side of caution. I'll use some neat's foot oil. I like the pure neat's foot oil. Tends to be easier on the leather. I also think it's easier on the horse. There are some of those more commercial oils that, if they're on and that horse is sweating and in the sun, sometimes it can aggravate their skin. So I like the neat's foot oil. I don't put a lot on at any given time. Or there's a couple of the conditioners that you can buy come in a spray bottle. They work really well. Again, it's how you like to have the leather at the end of the day, what you want it to feel like and how well it will repel some water and stay soft and supple while you're going to be using it, and sort of in between. Certainly those leather conditioners work good. You can use those to just wipe it off after, a couple of heavy rides. If there's a lot of sweat and grime on it, that you can use that to wipe the stuff off, and it seems to work really well.
I think maybe with my experience, and I think it's kind of what you touched on, maybe is that whenever we maybe if you just have kind of a rag with some oil on it to wipe it down once in a while, and then maybe, 2, 3, 4 times a year actually go in and really clean it up and go on the back sides and underneath and in betweens and all that kind of stuff, and really, really get in there and get the grime out.
And I think that's the best part. And, take it apart.
Yeah.
That'll also, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but take it apart. If you happen to be one of those people that has a nylon tack, I have a couple of nylon bridles. I don't use them very much, but because I personally don't like them, but I have a couple for other purposes. And I was struggling with cleaning them. I actually threw it in a net bag and put it in the washing machine at home with a load of towels.
Yeah.
Took the bed off and just threw it in, and it came out as clean as can be. You can imagine, almost like it was brand new. I just hung it up in the tack room and let it dry. It was pretty dry coming out of the washing machine, but that certainly worked really well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one good thing about nylon tack is that, I mean, a little water and a little soap and spray it down and hang it up to dry for sure.
And it'll keep it soft and supple. It's one of the things with nylon tack that I think when we forget to keep it clean, it gets really stiff. And
Yeah,
if you're trying to buckle something or unbuckle something, it can be quite a challenge.
yeah. So as we're cleaning our tack, whether it be a bridle or a saddle or whatever, what signs should we be looking for? You know, where it's weak or worn. You know, maybe in our leather latigos and our head stalls, reins, or you know, what kind of wear points should we be looking for and that kind of thing.
I think, those looking at probably the first one, and I hadn't realized this till I tried bringing some old tack back to life, but I would spend some time looking around the buckles. And it's more not the buckle, well, certainly the buckle itself, but looking at how the buckle is attached to that piece of leather, because I think that's a spot that can dry out and can get pretty weak and crack pretty easily. Now, the heavier the material you have, probably the better off you're going to be. But I think that's a great place to look. And I would also look at the buckles, because in some cases, if we have some less expensive equipment, a little less expensive on the hardware, that stuff will corrode fairly easily or just oxidize, and then it will come apart on you. But I'd be looking for places that it's wear on my latigos, where I'm doing up the cinch. I want to look to see there. I certainly want to look at where the latigo is attached to the D-ring, because if there's a lot of wear there, those will start to come apart on the corners. And you'll actually see, and I've seen it probably as much with nylon latigos as with leather ones, that they'll actually start to come apart there.
Yeah,
And it almost looks like, I don't want to say somebody's cut it, but that's kind of what it looks like.
yeah,
That it starts to get loose in that corner, and that's the thing to look at. On our reins, depending on how you attach your reins, um, sometimes those water ties, you might be just better off to spend $5 and buy a new set and redo it
yeah,
after a year or two. Um, but also check those uh, latigo strips that you use to tie your reins together. Make sure that they're good. Pull on them. The other one that I've been noticing more recently is the check your curb straps.
yeah,
And you got two places. You got where it's attached to if you've got leather attached to a curb chain, check where it attaches to the chain, but also, again, check the buckle, and then also check where you end up buckling it, because in a lot of cases, that's where we see some of the wear. And it just, you can tell that the leather's getting old, uh, starts to get a little harder than you maybe like to. It's not quite as supple. Uh, and in some cases, too, we start to see, again, with the buckles, that they start to kind of wear and don't buckle and unbuckle as easily. One of the things that I do with my bridles that I ride with, that I make sure that I put the leather punch through the holes every now and then, just to not make them bigger, but just to keep them open. Because
yeah,
I hate having to grab that buckle and just reef on it, particularly if the bridle's on the horse's head,
yeah,
to make an adjustment. So just thinking about little and looking and saying, and if it's worn, you're probably better off to go buy something new and replace it than it is to be, going down the trail or getting ready to go. And as you do up that latigo, that it's now in a piece hanging in your hand.
right, right, for sure. Yeah. Um, Whenever we start to talk about some cinches, we see, you know, there's places that they can wear. And probably one thing that I've noticed is that a dirty cinch will gall the horse, you know, in their girth area a lot worse than one that's clean. And whenever we look into cinches, I mean, we can go to the tack store and they've probably got 100 different cinches. And, you know, we've got vented ones, we've got mohair ones, we've got alpaca ones, we have neoprene ones. And in my experience, I've used all of them myself. But it seems like that, you know, the mohair or the alpaca will show dirt and stuff a little worse than the neoprene does. But don't you think that those neoprenes still have a lot of dirt and sweat collected in those that can cause some problems? And how about cleaning those?
I think so, and I think those are the ones that you probably need to be washing those or cleaning those off. It's almost like you commented with having the oily rag that you can just wipe stuff down. I think your man-made fibers need to be taken care of probably a little bit more frequently than the others, because of the fact that there's places where things will build up, and wiping them off and keeping them, just making sure they're clean. And at times I think people might say, well, you're just overdoing it. And it's like, uh, it's a lot better to spend 10 minutes at the end of a ride wiping something off and putting it upright than it is when you go to that ride the next weekend and you go to cinch up old Nelly and there's a great big old sore there.
Yeah.
And now how do I do it? And I think a lot of people, we want something that's going to be comfortable for the horse. It's going to wick moisture away, be easy to clean. I actually think some of the natural fibers are a lot better, and easier on the horse. For show horses, it's how they look, but in a lot of cases we can get by with some of those other products because we're actually not riding that long.
Right.
And
Right.
it's a lot different. So I think those ones where you can take a stiff brush out of the grooming bag that's clean and clean them off is probably something that's really worth looking into.
Yeah. So kind of along the same lines as our saddle pad, of course, the things that are touching the horse are saddle pads and, cinches and stuff like that. So that's definitely something that we want to make sure is clean and keep those definitely free of debris and that kind of thing. But, kind of touch on maybe having a wool pad that kind of gets some build up in hard spots. And once again, neoprenes that sit and felt, and how, whenever we turn that pad over before we throw it on the horse's back and we're looking at the bottom side of it, I mean, how much is going to cause an issue? I mean, is something, is 2 or 3 little hairs going to cause an issue, or is it's got to be something that's a little bit bigger than that?
Probably for most horses, it's going to be something that's going to be a little bit bigger. And those areas that are kind of dirty, maybe be a little uncomfortable. And again, when we start looking at horses that we're riding all day, we're riding on ground that's not nice and flat like an arena. So there's going to be more movement. Certainly going to depend on the kind of pad it is. I think some people get carried away and have too much pad, and so that it doesn't sit and kind of fit to the horse, and we're moving too much and causing some pressure that way. I'd be more worried about things that are going to stick them. So, if you're worried at all, again, take your stiff brush and just clean them off. There are some of those pads that are a little more, people will take a used pad. I remember talking to a cowboy out west, and I said, so used pads, what do you do? And he said, well, he actually ran a tack store. He said, we don't clean them here, but if I buy them for my own horses, he said, take them to the car wash.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a high pressure hose or high pressure washer, clean them off with that, hang them up to dry. The one thing that I thought was really interesting, he said, when you clean them, don't use a lot of soap.
Yeah.
Because it can be really hard to get out of a pad.
Yeah.
And so I thought, so I have cleaned some pads that hung them up at where you hang up your floor mats at the car wash and
Right.
hosed them off, and they came out pretty good. The other thing that I think with some of the pads is clean them with your vacuum cleaner.
Right.
I mean, that'll get the stuff that's going to cause a problem. And if you do it every now and then, I think you'll be fine. Probably the biggest thing, Garrett, is just pay attention to what you're putting on the back of the horse.
Right. Right.
And putting it in the right place.
Whenever we say pre-riding check, equipment check, make sure, and before you ever catch your horse, just have everything cleaned and ready to go on.
Yep. And have it be organized.
Yeah.
Some people take their cinch off. If you just got a single cinch on the saddle, some people do that. Whether you do or don't, make sure that it's hung up on the saddle so that, it's not dragging in the ground. I mean, there's so many little things we could do that help it to stay clean, be organized for the horse, be nice to the horse when we're putting it on. And I think there's just, it's not, you don't have to go to a lot of effort. Everybody says, oh, we got, that guy said I got to clean my bridle all the time. It's like, no, I'm just telling you to wipe it off. I mean, I do mine. If I'm riding lots, I probably clean it maybe once a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's with my, if I think it's really, if we've been having weather where we got a lot of sweat, probably it's more my reins that I clean up and the crown piece of my bridle. That's where I spend my most time, and it doesn't take very long.
Yeah. Maybe wipe that sweat off and make sure and hang it up where it can dry. I know saddle pads, definitely put those where they can dry, not on the saddle hanger, under the saddle where it, condenses under it and holds that moisture on it for sure.
If you can, where I ride, we turn them upside down in the sun.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And little sunshine will do a great job on cleaning up your saddle pads.
Oh yeah. Dr. Bob, as we start to wrap up this session, is there any last words that you would like to say about our pre-riding equipment check?
I think just spend some time and look at it. And if you're not sure, maybe change what you think might not be strong enough, because the last place you want to have it fail you is, halfway down the ride. And I don't care what kind of riding you're doing. Make sure that everything, and the other thing it'll do is if it's clean and in good shape, just think how much more comfortable your horse is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Dr. Bob, well, we appreciate you joining us today. We're going to wrap this one up, and we'll look forward to you joining us the next time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.